Yeah, I think we're on. Chris Vosper. We're not live. We're not live. It's not going out live. But we're recording. So do me a favour, Chris, for the benefit of people listening, watching. In fact, just a quick one for the benefit of people watching. If you can see that we are slowly becoming drenched in sweat, it's because there's no AC in the studio yet, and it is flipping. It is hotter than a big bag of hot things outside, and it's like a greenhouse in here.
It's warm.
So yeah, it is warm. Chris, give your background for the benefit of people watching and listening.
Wow. Okay, that's a long old bit. I'll try and compress it. So I am 42. I was born in Cardiff, just over 42 years ago. Yeah, that's right. I'm a Welshman. Did you know that? No, we didn't. Okay, we'll probably come back to that. So just let's abbreviate things. I did a 17 and a bit years regular military service, left 2 years ago, set my own business up. We'll come on to that a bit later. I served mainly as an Apache pilot, but I moved on to the Air Force after 9 years in the Air Corps, carried on flying. And then I left to set my own business up and do motorsport, and hopefully I'll get back into some flying as part of the business later on.
So Army Air Corps as an Apache pilot.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you. Right. Talk me through. Why? How come you end up transferring?
Right. So.
Why would anyone transfer from the army to the RAF?
So it was a hell of a journey to get onto the Apache in the first place. So that was a lifelong ambition. Very, very chuffed to have got there in the first place, and absolute privilege to have served. It gets to the point, certainly when. At that career sort of transition point, at that time, as an officer, you were going to go out of the cockpit into desk jobs, into staff jobs, not interested. So, just simply approached the Air Force and said, like, if I was to transfer, is there the option to just come straight across and jump straight into a helicopter flying job? And is that a goer? Is it easy? And they pretty much came back and said, yep, no problem. What do you want to do? When do you want to do it? And how long do you want to serve? So it was a no-brainer. It was it was a transition into this point in life now. So I could leave sort of the full-on belt-fed Afghan tours, the awesome but young single man's life as an Apache pilot. And then it was a chance to sort of transition out into civilian life, because the intensity was dialed down a lot. It's just the Air Force a bit more mellow. No op tours. I didn't do a single op tour with the Puma Force. And it was the original plan was I was going to build up towards getting my private licenses so I could then become a commercial helicopter pilot as an air ambulance pilot, was the original thought, and do that in parallel to setting my business up. So it would have been a whole stack easier doing that as I did coming across the Air Force than if I'd have stayed in the Army and got myself into a staff job I wasn't particularly enjoying, that was probably going to be consuming all my time. So it was a wise move at the time, and it made sense.
Talk to me about the experience of being an Apache pilot, one in general, but also on the op tours. So, and the reason being is you can hear, read, and see gazillions of stories and people talking about experiences of sort of on the ground troops on different operational tours, not just Afghan. So, I mean, if you're happy, talk through what that experience is like of your day to day generally, what kind of teams you're working in. Just talk through it, because I have got no idea.
Really?
Do you know what I know about Apache pilots, which is a myth? Right. Is that you can always tell an Apache pilot because one eye is facing one way and the other eye is pointing the other way.
I know. There's a lot of chat about that. People have been trying to read two books at the same time. Doesn't work. I did three Afghan tours. They were 4 months long each. The build up was probably, just as intense. It was about a 4 month build up for each. In between times, based at Wadisham, as it was at that point in life, there was not much flying to be had at Wadisham. There was, certainly as a junior middling captain, you were getting beasted with staff work and all the normal, basic officer stuff, regimental duties. But the pre-deployment training was really thorough. It's really good. We were out in the States for a good part of it, which, using the deserts in the States is a really good representation of being out on the ground in Afghan. Being on the tours itself, amazing, because there's none of that other nonsense going on. You're left to do your job, and it's resourced. You've got a full complement of aircraft. There's usually more serviceable aircraft available than you need. There's enough people manning everything, whereas, probably back at Wadisham, it was on skeleton manning. You're always missing a few guys, so everybody's working pretty hard to do extra bits to catch up. But we were left as an Apache force to get on, do that job, and we were given a pretty good a routine that worked well. It was a full-on 4 months. There's no time off. Every single day you're on the roster, but of course different days could be relatively easy compared to other days where it's pretty intense. But a typical cycle, we'd roll through 4 different things. So probably the most exciting and the most rewarding was the Very High Readiness Reserve. So that was your stood to day and night. It subsequently changed and it split out as you had day readiness and you had night readiness as 2 separate duties. But to start with, you do 72 hours in a oneer, and you're on 30 minutes notice by day, 60 minutes by night. So well within 30 minutes, you respond, and that'd be you going from in the crew room, legging it straight away on getting a call, get it straight at the aircraft, press all the buttons and switches that you need to get fired up and get going and get airborne as quickly as you can, and then respond to whatever's happening on the deck dynamically. So that, which would more often than not be a casualty or a massive troops in contact situation, where just having an Apache overhead and having the ability to that deterrent factor of just appearing there, plus that the firepower and all the extra eyes looking down from above, being able to report to the JTACs and let the guys know what's happening, was brilliant. That was quite a separate thing from the deliberate ops, where there would obviously be a bit more planning, it'd be a bit more structured. There'd be lots of multi-ship working with the Chinooks a lot, incredible piece of kit. With great carrying capacity, and obviously that was the mainstay of getting troops and kit around the battlefield. But also, there were other aircraft types joined us as we went, and multinational aircraft as well. So we'd be working with Americans a fair bit too. So you'd have these big packages, and they go out and they'd be vulnerable. So you'd have a couple of Apaches would go doing escort duties in case it got a bit hairy for the guys as they were approaching low and slow, getting opened up upon. At least having a couple of Apaches overhead and having the ability to see what's going on, and be able to respond quickly, preempting where the fire position might be, and be able to lay down fire enough to take control of the situation. Maybe get the guys, if Chinook's on short files to an approach, you can very quickly steer him around the sky, reposition him, and then deal with whatever that threat was and bring him back in. So, but more often than not, the routine stuff, not a great deal would kick off initially. So you'd just be following a flying program, and it would be escorting whichever platforms it was, bringing blokes in and around the battlefield. All pretty straightforward. But invariably, things change. Things would kick off, and we'd be airborne, and let's say we've done a series of drop-offs, and we've still got the Chinooks are good. They can go back to base, refuel, get their next load of passengers. But we might have gas still left in the tanks, and we'd be talking to the JTACs at various different ground locations, who, if something had kicked off maybe in an adjacent area, and we had enough time and fuel and weapons on board, then we'd, mostly by our own doing, get involved and just go and help out where we could. So it would be as efficient with that frame as possible. So even though in theory we're only going to go out and we were going to be flying a very predictable route through, following that program of this drop off at this location going to here, that would quite quickly escalate into us being able to get involved in supporting other ticks. And that was awesome. It was such a privilege to be able to do that, because you'd hear stories of guys in certainly some of the hairier PBs, and the guys would be, at least, I'm sure you've lived this yourself on numerous occasions, be like physically sick, shaking with, the fear of going out on patrol, because they know that statistically one or two of them aren't going to come back from the end of that patrol, or they're going to come back with a few less limbs than they went out on patrol with. So the privilege, the responsibility of making sure whatever you could eke out of that frame to get extra fuel, to get extra, it's just mainly getting the confidence for the guys on the ground to have eyes in the air that you can look ahead for where they're about to patrol and offer up suggestions of possible firing points, and be able to just loiter and have the ability to respond and preempt and give that extra bit of reassurance to the guys who are about to go out, even if, as I say, that wasn't on a scheduled deliberate op. That was amazing, and pretty much every Apache pilot and operator that I work with, the same mindset was there. It's we're here to serve. It's an awesome thing to be able to be in that cockpit and have all that firepower and go out and do deliberate strike ops, which is obviously a separate thing. But the most satisfying and the most demanding, and the bit you want to get right the most, is the ability to help the guys out who have got it so much tougher than you got in that air-conditioned cockpit. I might add, maybe you didn't know that you can digitally set the temperature in the cockpit to whatever you need. So it's, and you're sat down in the seat. Which is padded. It's comfortable. You've got plenty of space to put your it's not a cup holder, but there's certainly places to put your drinks, and you can have a scram bag with you. It's a comfortable environment, but the trade-off is you're working so hard, you're concentrating so hard that you can come back from a sortie absolutely spent. You're just completely exhausted just because of the concentration. Yeah. Not physically demanding per se, and not, patrolling in 45 degrees heat with a mega Bergen on. And I wouldn't want to do any kind of injustice to the guys who are properly grabbing it doing that. But in a different way, it's a different level of fatigue, because the consequences of getting it wrong, of slipping up with, your concentration just slips for a second, or you've accidentally killed your own guys, or you've killed civilians, or you've failed to prevent saving lives because you weren't quick enough to engage some enemy. So it's that level of intensity, but it doesn't stay like that. You just have to, as I say, so the routine task, the cockpit cycle can be relatively straightforward, and then you'll just have these spikes of complete intensity where you're just maxed out. You're working at maximum capacity because the radio chatter is going mental. You've got 4 radios that you can listen to at any one time. And of course, you got whoever's on whichever net they're on, and that's their only net. That is the most important, conversation that's going on. And if it's the JTAC who's, obviously controlling that bit of airspace, sat on the OC's shoulder, talking up to the Apache, then he doesn't necessarily appreciate that you've got 3 other radios all kicking off with equally important pressing messages being passed back and forth. So, and there are time critical things that you need to get in. So things like you might not have the rules of engagement available to you at that time to be able to prosecute a target. So you've got to try and negotiate that on one of the other radios while you're busy trying to explain that to the JTAC that you're setting yourself up to be in a position to fire.
I wanted to ask you about that, the rules of engagement. So, I'm not on any specific incident per se, but how do they? Can you explain to me like the levels, how they work? I know how the on the ground ones work, the infantry, not just infantry, but for the ground troops. Card Alpha and 421, 422, and 429. Yeah. What's the structure of it for you guys?
God, I know you're asking. Okay. As I remember, without wanting to swerve the question too much, that's the essence of it. So obviously, Card Alpha, if anybody, very rarely would be ourselves feeling threatened. If we can see a force on the ground that is about to be threatened by lethal force. So that was the most likely time that we would be able to engage. So, and we would engage with Kyle Alpha under a Kyle Alpha situation. Okay. So very rarely did you have guys shooting up at us. So it was a direct threat to our own life, but that's still there. If we saw, even if it's one guy in flip-flops and a dish dash shooting an AK-47 up at us at 2,000 feet, it's not really going to do a great deal against an armored helicopter, but that is still somebody trying to shoot us, kill us. We're more than rights to go and engage him, and that's very simply about as easy as a Kyle Alpha goes. So the progression beyond that is obviously 422, 421, 422. Racking my brains to remember the exact detail, other than if there is intent, and you can. I mean, it's just exactly as everybody on the ground would have been.
So you did operate under 421, 422, and 429. It was like the same naming conventions.
It was the same naming conventions, but we didn't necessarily get blanket ROE for the same for the whole of the operating area. So at different times or different geographical areas, different ROE could apply. So for example, 429 might only have applied up in the northeastern corner, but only for a certain period of time while it was hot and while there was intelligence suggest a certain amount of enemy activity. But if you cross a particular notional boundary, then something else would apply, and it was probably, if 421, 422 was pretty much stock standard everywhere, if memory serves. But obviously, caveat everything is if anybody has a threat to their life, as far as if it's multinational or any other force that's about to get engaged, then we'll be able to obviously engage back.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same.
Same on the ground.
So again, same on the ground. Different situation. The RE was dictated by situations, operations, geographic location.
Yeah.
The flipping time of day sometimes.
It's great. You just explained it a lot better than I just waffled. But the essence of it was though that having 421, 422. What I do remember, it was the big frustration was that you could see guys, enemy fighters, laying IEDs or pretty suspect activity, and you didn't necessarily have the ability to engage them because it depended on how stringent the ROE was at that time. And if you launched on a mission, specifically as I was saying, if you're going on a different mission to what you wind up doing, so if you're going to go and escort Chinooks and other support helicopters around the battlefield, but you wind up getting involved in supporting a troops in contact situation, or you just happen to be having spare fuel and be able to work to one of the ground commanders, and you happen to see some guys doing something dodgy. There wasn't a Kyle Alpha situations. They weren't shooting at you or about to kill one of your oppos, but they were either digging quite clearly at some IEDs or an equivalently bad level of sort of delayed badness. We would then be in a negotiation back to the ops room to then try and get legal support to get that rush through from higher headquarters to be able to give us the ROE to be able to prosecute the target. And so the delay was we'd get ourselves in a position to be able to engage as soon as we possibly could whilst passing that message back. But of course, by the time that the legal rep has come on the blower, worked it all out, decided that it's good to go, well, those guys may well be long gone. So even though at the time, if you had the answer, yes, or you'd launched on that mission with 421 and you could have prosecuted that target within seconds, the frustration was a lot of the time, you just had to watch and let the guys just melt away into the night, unable to do anything other. Obviously, you'd be able to report the exact location. So it's useful intelligence to the guys on the ground, but it's not as useful as seeing 6 bomb makers and destroying the ID and taking those 6 guys out of the picture there and then.
Yeah.
So,
I see the problem. I see where the rules of engagement are there, and it is, and I've been in that position where it's frustrating, and you can't. 2 seconds. Sorry. And you can't you can't take them out for whatever reason. At the same time, I can understand why it's there, because ideally, I mean, I'm assuming you're an ethical and morally guided guy, you know, who, if there was no rules of engagement, could be completely trusted to make the right decision every time and not go just brassing things up just for the sake of brassing things up.
Yeah.
The problem is, on the grand scheme of things, especially the ground troops, because there's so many of us, then the number of morons you get in that organisation is more than in a small unit, for example. You know. Yeah. I mean, and then going on to your point about being able to take out those bomb makers. Sometimes it's for the better. You capture them and you get the intelligence. I made when I was having a discussion with a guy called Ben Griffin before, a Hereford guy who's ex-Hereford guy who's he's now a member of Veterans for Peace. In fact, he was the UK coordinator for Veterans for Peace, it's not a pacifist organisation, but it would sound like it. But they don't believe in an interventionist foreign policy, and we should minimise our military to the size only needed for defence, homeland defence, right? And I sort of kick myself for it now, because it's a podcast that it was very popular because Ben represents, you know, the epitome of British forces, the quality of British forces at Hereford, and yet he also has a completely opposing view to what you think. Again, Veterans for Peace, and he's a mega guy. He's a mega guy. We have very opposing views on some stuff, and we didn't agree on it a lot. But in that interview, we were talking, and it was a discussion about. Was it a discussion about ROE? I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I think I made the point. It was about Dickers. It was about Dickers.
Okay.
It was about Dickers.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I made the point, in certain circumstances, again, this is without context, listen to that podcast, but I said, you know, I saw a Dicker, I'd kill him.
Yeah.
You know, but there is a caveat to that I was just mentioning on it. I'd prefer not to. I'd prefer to be able to capture them, you know, and elicit intelligence out of them, which is the point in that. Sometimes killing the people isn't always the best way forward. And capture, in fact, probably in most cases, capture is the best way forward, unless it's an immediate threat to life, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, interesting viewpoint. And yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. I understand where Ben's coming from. That's, you know, both sensible views. I think I'm probably towards somewhere in the middle. I reckon it's a tricky one. You, as an Apache force out there, we had the privilege to be able to go out and, you know, observe for ourselves, make the assessment ourselves, what was, you know, work out our own ROE, work out what the situation was, whether that was a target that was valid to be prosecuted, and we had the firepower to do that. And if, provided we already had the ROE and didn't have to radio back to negotiate it, then we would just carry on and make the engagement. And, but every time you made, a trigger pull and release weapons, everything would be debriefed, you know, with complete, thorough scrutiny. So you'd have the intelligence officer, or, you know, equivalent, an OC, or equivalently high ranking representative, to see the full footage of your gun tape, see every single engagement that you made, with complete justification required for under what rules of engagement were you engaging, what weapons system were you using, why, what were the risk estimate distances of how far those munitions would go, how, you know, so if you put the Hellfire missile, for example, so you got roughly a couple of 100 meters radius blast zone. So yeah, if you're going to put that in really close, and there's going to be potential for collateral damage, you know, within that 200 meter radius, there's potential for some civilian casualties. Oof, you know, stand by. You should not be using that Hellfire missile. If you've got the option to use 30mm cannon, which could do exactly the same job. Okay, that's a straightforward case. So that was clear cut. But what happens then if your gun malfunctions, or you've used up all your 30mm and all you got left is a Hellfire missile? So the only thing that you can use is a massive overkill. It's not quite as mad as putting a 2,000 pound bomb from a jet in, sure. But if by launching that Hellfire missile to go and prosecute a particular target, so it could be a Card Alpha situation, one enemy fighter with an AK-47 pointing directly at what you know to be a friendly position and looking like he's about to engage. Very clear-cut card alpha situation there, bar for the fact that if you were to engage him with your one hellfire there and then, but you took a load of civilian casualties, what's the risk? I mean, if you didn't put that hellfire in, is that guy just from 200 meters away with an AK spraying and praying actually going to do any damage to your blokes? If you're already in comms with the JTAC on the OC shoulder, and you can just say, like, I've got a single fighter who's, give him the full situation, he's pointing the AK-47 at you, he's a fair old way away. I'm not in a position to engage unless, if by doing so, I risk potentially killing, if not injuring, a load of civilians, which in the grand scheme of things, especially in the era of the courageous restraint, where they got particularly tight on minimizing doing any kind of engagement, as you probably remember if you were there, if you did tours in 08. So that throws up conundrums. And then, of course, we more often than not, would operate with a wingman who would potentially be in a position to engage with a different weapon system than you've got. But of course, the time lag, there's the risk of, if you hand that target of that one, I'm using the example of a single gunman, hand that off to your wingman so he can engage with a 30mm cannon, safely destroy that guy and not destroy any civilian population. But it's going to take him at least 30 seconds more to get in a position to put that accurate engagement in, by which time that guy could have unloaded a couple of mags and scooted and potentially killed a couple of friendlies in the tree line just by doing that handover and having that time delay. Whereas if you'd have launched that hellfire straight away, you'd have saved a few of your blokes' life. Those are the tricky conundrums we'd have on a day-to-day basis. And the ethical element of it is, well, you're there, you're serving your country, and we've got to try and do whatever we can to save the lives of the guys, but we don't want to escalate the long-term problems for the future of Afghanistan. Tricky times.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's weighing up. It's weighing all those things up. I'm glad actually that when I was serving in the different places, that when I was on the ground, I always had the advantage of a precision weapon system, either my own or someone else's near me, which you guys obviously didn't always have that. But again, and this is go back to the reasons for ROE and why they exist, is to make you, not me individually, is to make people do a proper appreciation of the situation before opening up and they think about the repercussions. Because if they weren't there are absolutely people in this world who would go, hellfire here, just do it. Well, that's what I've got, so let's just fire it in there without any thought for those people around, because they just see black and white and they just see threat to our guys or girls, and let's just do it. And it's not the right way to do it. And they don't consider the other options, which veer away from just outright killing the target when the collateral damage. The other options, like you said, you've got a wingman for myself to be other members of the team, other units, other options, communicating to the friendly unit under threat that there's a target, there's a threat to know and where it is. And that again goes back to the ROE side. Why it exists. I was going to ask you a question, and what was it? What's the in terms of the route to become an Apache pilot, to becoming it? In my head, it's quite a prestigious position to hold, and you need to fight tooth and nail to get there, and you need to be of a certain talent level. If you, I'm using talent in terms of, that's a general term, right? Yeah. I don't want you to play it down. What's your opinion of it? You've been through the middle. Talk to me about it.
So I don't know if my example is atypical. I think I would echo exactly what you just said. It is, for me, it was a purpose. It was an ambition, a dream, and it was incredibly hard work to get to that position. And so that all the things I had to do to get to that cockpit was pretty significant, and probably I think it would have maybe come easier to some of the guys who are maybe naturally more talented. I'm a pretty ordinary guy, come from a pretty humble, ordinary background, and I absolutely worked as hard as I possibly could over a really sustained period of time to get to that point. So, yeah, really, it comes back to when I was 13. I was thinking about this in the car on the way up. I think about how did I actually wind up getting to that decision point that I was going to go and become an Apache pilot in the first place. So originally, I remember having a chat with my best mate at the time, and at 13 he's like, right, you can go to the air cadets and they will teach you how to fly, and you can potentially go on and become an RAF pilot. I'm like, that sounds cool. And he says, yeah, will you come with me? Yeah, sure, sounds great. So I went along. He didn't even bother coming along. But I rocked up, just 13-year-old kid, and see all these posters of planes all around the little air cadet hut, and I'm like, this is awesome. I'm doing this. And I made the commitment at that point in time, I'm going to be a pilot. So for the next few years, I worked pretty hard, got my GCSE, did reasonably well, absolutely kicked the backside out of doing as much as I could, as Chad as it sounds, with air cadets. So I did loads of, all the flying, volunteer for everything. I went for a sixth form scholarship. So if I'd have got that, then that meant that I'd join the Air Force straight away at 18 as a pilot. And they chuck you some money and they give you a flying scholarship while you're doing your A-levels. Yeah, I'll have you a piece of that. So went forward, did the selection process. I was just 15, just turned 16. I didn't get it. And I was crushed. I was absolutely, for a few months having a proper sulk about it. And I was like, right, okay, actually, my folks were brilliant at this. They were like, right, you need to, there are other ways, there are other routes to get to where you're going. It's just, that would have been one route. So that's not the Air Force saying you can't join. That's them saying you haven't got a sixth form scholarship, you haven't got the easy ticket. So pull your finger out, you're doing more than you thought. So actually, I started with a bit of a blank sheet of paper, sat down with my dad. He was brilliant because he'd done a bit of stuff as a TA officer on the selection board. And he's like, right, okay, these are the things that from my perspective that you would really benefit from doing to be a better candidate. Because I wasn't really, if I'm completely honest, I wasn't interested in being an officer. It was just a prerequisite to being a pilot in the RAF. That was the original plan.
Have you got military family?
Yes. Dad was, he did a short service commission, in the Royal Regiment of Wales, and, he was in the TA for Yonks. But my granddad was, he trained as a pilot during the war, and obviously I grew up listening to dits of what it was like being a pilot, or trained to be a pilot in the Second World War, and then obviously watching war films as a kid. And Dad is really good. He'd take us to I'd be on the range. I remember I was probably 6, maybe 5 even, and I'd be there on the range in the TA drill hall, and we'd go camping and seeing loads of military kit. It was so always had that influence as a kid. But once I'd made that decision at 13, I was going to go for RAF pilot. And that I was fully focused on that, and then didn't get it. Probably one of the best things to happen to me, because it was a first proper taste of failure. I was like, right, I need to really regroup on this and pull my finger out. So sat down. Dad was mega helpful with this, but it was right. The things you're going to need to do: go to uni, get a good degree. Stop banging the table. We talked about this in the brief, didn't we? Beforehand. Whatever you do, don't bang the table. Here I am banging the table. So he suggested that it would work really well going for, sort of growing academically, but also as a character. Go and join the Royal Marines Reserves and go and challenge myself, physically, put myself through the mill, get myself to, a position where I'm beyond what the required standards are for the Air Force, so there's no way they're going to turn me down. So, which I did. So as I was doing my A-levels, I'm a 17-year-old kid, scrawny, haven't really done any phys at a serious level, and then spending my weekends just getting thrashed down at Lympstone, and then coming back, finishing my A-levels. And then I decided, again, a lot of Dad's influence and help here, to take 2 years off, took a double gap year. Luckily enough, did well enough in my A-levels, got my place at uni. And then I took the 2 years off because I'm young in my age group. So it meant I'd still finish uni at 22, well within pilot age criteria of 24 was the limit at that time. So within those 2 years, I then finished all my recruit training. I did a flying scholarship. I went to Namibia and spent 3 months there on expedition doing Operation Rally. Did a whole bunch of different sort of philanthropic things, and just did some charity work and a whole bunch of things just to make my CV a lot more impressive, but also fundamentally just to say, right, I can go back to the Air Force, go for a re-show and say, yeah, I think I look at all the things I've done now and I feel that I'm able to contribute and offer a lot more. But in so doing, that obviously opened up the door into seeing other possibilities. So yeah, I remember just being in some village fete and just seeing these 2 young Power Edge guys who they probably just literally finished Power Edge Depot, but seeing the confidence, seeing that, they were just, nothing was a bother for them. They were so bulletproof. Can you remember what it was like finishing training and just
still like that? Yeah, still like that now.
Still like that now. Yeah. And just I remember looking at it and going, right, that's a level of endurance. That's a level of hardship that they've had to go through to get qualified, to get to a standard where they can be part of that unit and be acknowledged to do so. And that pride that you get from that accomplishment is something I didn't feel that I would get from just going through initial officer training in the Air Force. Yes, very much so with the flying side. But I turned my attention away from just going for the RAF, and I looked at the Marines and the Army, but mainly I was set on joining the Marines as a pilot because I'd just already gone down that route, got my green lid, done a Navy flying scholarship. I thought, right, this is going to give me that extra dimension of challenge and character building and accomplishment on top of the flying tick that I wouldn't get going just to the Air Force. But that evolved further. So as I was at uni, and having turned up with already, as a 20-year-old kid, all the other students just probably fresh out of school. I remember sharing a flat. There was 8 of us in this flat, and the girl next door to my room should be like what I would consider a typical student. So, be getting up at 2:00 in the afternoon. There'd be clouds of weed like puffing under the door. Would maybe or maybe not turn up to lessons if she felt like it. I'm on a totally different agenda here. I'd already, I'd done quite a substantial amount of stuff to get my CV up to scratch, and I'm now going to spend the next 3 years working as hard as I can for when I go back to doing selection, officer and aircrew selection again. And I just fully committed. I was 9 to 5 in it with the degree, and then spending all my spare time doing the Royal Marine Reserves. And I obviously decided to crank that up a notch, go for my commission. And concurrently to that, I did some of the elements of the reserve squadron of Poole of their bit as much as I could fit in before I finished up and took my place up at Sandhurst. And this all shaped towards going towards the Army Air Corps, because they were going to get the Apache. It was going to be, so it proved to be an awesome battle-winning piece of kit and amazing to get involved with. And because I'd pushed myself and experienced that, the Marines, and later on elements, just a little flavour of what life could have been like in the SF world, and dipped my toe in that water to that extent. I felt I'd ticked that box and didn't necessarily want to go down the Marines flying route, although that would have been just as awesome a proposition. The Air Corps and the prospect of being an Apache pilot idea was probably the thing that just took it as the most desirable thing, and that just became my complete fixation and my purpose. So I worked extremely hard throughout the rest of uni, did a mech eng degree, wasn't really interested in becoming a mechanical engineer. I had no intention of becoming a serving engineer, let alone a civilian engineer, but it was worth doing that degree because that would have given me a little bit more of an edge in doing all the technical elements of flying training and ground training. But it was incredibly hard work compared to, sort of doing some, like, I don't know, a geography degree or something like that. Sorry, anybody who's listening who's a geography graduate who actually had to work hard for it, but not want to downplay that too much. And then I was spending all my spare time running up and down hills, or I'd play rugby, but for fun, more for going and doing the fizz. So I'd rock up and I'd do as much on the drill nights as I could, and I'd go and do boxing for the fizz. I'd go in as much as I could to try and look at the personal growth and the self-development angle, rather than just having a laugh. But they all paid off, and I got to Sandhurst, and I did well enough because I've fully committed myself in the first couple of terms that by the time I got to your choice of arm board, and the Air Corps was the first board that I went through, because you get a couple of choices. They were content that I'd done enough. So all that graft of just box ticking and getting that CV completely full, which all started back at 16 when I just got denied at that point in time. It all worked out, and actually I probably took my foot off the gas a little bit for the rest of Sandhurst. In fairness, if I'm completely honest, but I know that sounds a bit jack. I felt a little bit justified because I pulled out so much to try and get that place in the first place. I then went through the flying grading. So the first proper bit before you're allowed to get on the pilot's course is a 3-week mini compressed version of the first part of flying training. And it's only something like 12 or 13 one-hour flights. But of course, they're all assessed, and then how you perform is assessing your learning curve. It's assessing are you able to absorb this amount of information, progress at the required rate that makes you economically viable. Because if you can't, it's going to be too expensive for you to go through flying training if you have to resit stuff all the time. So that's your filter. So I worked really hard. To a large degree, it's memory test. They were just chucking all sorts of stuff at you. You got to learn all your checks. So you have to be able to start the thing up, do various checks at every given point, at every phase of flight. When you line it up for runway, you've got pre-takeoff checks. As soon as you take off, post-takeoff checks, and then you're up to the area, you're doing another bunch of checks, and you're just constantly having to regurgitate what they've given you. Then they'll revise what they taught you in the previous lesson, and then they'll teach you something new, and it's monkey see, monkey do, but you learn it. If you don't reproduce it well enough at that point, you're almost at the point where it's evidence that your learning curve isn't steep enough. Anyway, thankfully, came to pass. Again, my graft worked. I was getting bantered by my course mates. So like, why are you not in the bar every night having a whale of a time when you're in your room learning your checks? I'm like, well, let's save that session to the end of the course when I pass it. But there's a lot riding on this. This means a lot to me. So it was worth putting that effort, and it worked. And obviously we had a mega session at the end. But I was like, clearly, if you guys are on it every night, you're not taking it that seriously. You're not that bothered by it. Anyway, having passed that was me on the pilot's course.
Did they pass?
Yeah, but not spectacularly. But I wasn't willing to just throw the dice, because it's like, for some of the guys, it's like, yeah, this would be cool to go and be a helicopter pilot, but if it doesn't work out, c'est la vie. I had a different mindset. It's like, I've invested years of graft into getting to this point, so I'm not about to just throw away because I can't discipline myself for a couple of days.
It wasn't like a slagging.
Sorry.
Between you and them, you're the kind of guy I'd want as an Apache pilot, not the guy who's on the lash every night. But
you know what?
If you were on the ground, if you were in the army, mate, or as in the army, not a pilot, then you'd be a straight bloke.
Yeah.
You'd be called a straight bloke, as in straight down the line, but he'd also be the guy everyone relied on, I think, most of the time.
Yeah, you're like, I never want to go on the sesh with this guy whatsoever. Now, don't get me wrong. What I'm not explaining to you is that, I was probably influenced by some of the older guys in the RMR, and obviously, rugby club socials, but we got progressively more mental on the source, and it was just, obviously nudity, swamping, all the standard stuff, but from a young age, as in a students' union, doesn't really go down so well. So, but yeah, we definitely offset the hard graft with some craziness. But for me, you work hard, you play hard. So don't think I was just literally just being a inky swat. But for the times I needed to apply myself, I did, and it worked. Because passing that course, that was a ticket to get on the flying training. And then, thankfully, 18 months later, passed it, all good. Between that and starting my pilot's course, we were basically given the option to go and do an infantry attachment or cavalry attachment. So obviously I chose the Power Edge, and wound up having an interview with a panel, including General Jackson, who was nice. All the guys were great, but of course, relatively intimidating. But thankfully, because I'd already got my Air Corps place at that point in time, I just said, look, if you don't mind, I'd love to do an attachment with you, but I already accepted my Air Corps place. So, yes, I'd love to join the Parachute Regiment. If I wasn't going to go for the Air Corps, then that would be my first choice. However, I'm definitely committed on going to the Air Corps. Any chance you'd allow me to do 6 months on attachment with a Parachute Regiment? And he said, yep, of course, that can happen. And luckily I then went to Dover, as it was, did a couple of weeks with one para, got absolutely beasted, then did P Company, then went to Bryce, did my jumps, and then went to the 2 para in South Armagh, did a few weeks out there, which is amazing. Really, really impressive bunch of guys. And then got cracking my pilot's course. And then from that point on, I was probably 24 and a half by then. So over 11 and a half years of being pretty focused, and not the easy route by any means. I'm now starting my pilot's course. So that was 18 months of a fair bit of graft, but I passed it first time, no dramas, and got my wings. So
this is the thing. I didn't realise about getting the detachment, the Power Edge Mega, but this is the thing about I was thinking about it the other day, is that the ages of what we achieve, we being the royal we being ex-military, or even if you're still serving, the ages of what we achieve and experience relative to our civilian counterparts. And again, we don't realise how lucky we are. Like, we don't realise it. And this isn't like a slating of Civ Pop. It's that we don't realise how lucky we are. And even if those experiences are not positive experiences, if you have them early enough, depending on what it is, man, it changes you into a different beast. I'm not the person I am now if I had not joined up. Because I was thinking about it a day, like when I went by the time I went to Afghan, like my first significant tour in Afghan in 06, and I think at the time that we went, so I was second in command of was I? I think I was second in command of the sniper platoon. I had my own section. I was in that platoon there, and I'd already done a bunch of tours of Power Edge, and I was only 24. Like, and you're on about your pilot training, 24. But not just that, all the stuff you've done before, and the Power Edge attachment, the Royal Marines Reserve, the Sandhurst, the all of it. It's just unbelievable. We genuinely don't realise how lucky we are. And people look, sometimes I think people look upon the ex-military community and think, they've had a hard life. They've had a hard life, had a hard upbringing. It's that old, he had a hard paper round kind of thing. You look at a guy like myself, I look about 50 years old and I'm only 38. And you go, well, one, I grew up in the valleys, and two, I spent, my formative years of adulthood in Power Edge.
Yeah.
And not just highlighting Power Edge, any unit that'll do it to you.
Yeah.
But again, it's just that we don't realise how lucky we are. 24, being a pilot. Can I ask you a question about your chores? What is there a sortie or a mission that you flew that stands out in your mind as one of the most challenging, one of the more challenging or risky ones that you did that you could talk about?
Several. I think so. One that does spring to mind actually is there was an occasion we were on VHR. So 30 minutes notice to move for a daytime trip. We'd just come on duty. And we took over an aircraft that was serviceable in all respects, bar for the pilot's windscreen was completely opaque. Never seen that anywhere else. It just randomly delaminated and was completely opaque, so you couldn't see forward. You see out the side.
It's Apache.
It's Apache. Yeah. So the pilot sits in the back, the co-pilot gunner sits in the front, and separating the two is a blast wall perspex or acrylic, whatever, bulletproof clear material that normally every other time I've sat in that cockpit, it's clear enough you can see straight through. On this one aircraft, on this one occasion, completely opaque. And we just take over, and it's like, right, guys, help the engineers out because they need to just recoup the fleet and get everything serviceable. Do you mind just taking this aircraft? And we're like, no problem.
Just to clarify, this is the aircraft where the pilot can't see forward.
On this one occasion, yes. So, but you're thinking, well, that sounds a bit mental. The caveat is that so in an Apache, you've got a thermal camera mounted on the nose that projects the image in your right eye. So when you're night flying and it's absolutely pitch black out there, you can see enough through a thermal image in your right eye that you can fly around. And plus, the camera is able to move as your head moves. So as you're looking around, you've got a little bit of a delay, and there's a slight difference in magnification. It's like 1.1, if I remember rightly. So things are just ever so slightly big. Plus, the other weird thing about it is it's on a slight tilt. So it you have to compensate for that. As you move your head, you have to kind of tilt your head as you're turning it to get the same perspective as that, whatever that 5-degree tilt is. Anyway, it takes a period of time, but your brain eventually calibrates to it. I think it does. I don't know. And early on in the Apache course, they have the phase called the bag, the cockpit blackout, and they physically put a big black piece of material all over the glass. You can't see out at all. It's exactly the same situation as we're in now, right? All right, you could see out the sides here, but you can see forward. The purpose of that is to test whether you've got the ability in flying training to fly on a pitch as night and do everything just from the thermal. Because there's all the symbology in there, as well as the thermal image you're seeing. It's all overlaid with green figures of heights and speeds and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Sorry, just to jump in. So in that situation, then your right eye is doing the looking outside via the thermal, and your left eye is on the instruments inside.
Yeah, I couldn't. If you asked me, I couldn't fully explain to you quite what's going on in the brain. And what you're seeing and why and how it works. But if you can just imagine that the image in your right eye is it's in front of both eyes. That's how it seems. It's as if you've got goggles on rather than just a monocle, because your brain just sees that green writing. And it's a change of focus between 1 minute you're looking at the green screen and the green numbers in your right eye. The next minute, or the next split second, you're switching focus to looking inside the cockpit. But no different to if you were having a set of conventional night vision goggles over both eyes, and 1 second you're looking through them, and the next second you look down from them and look at the conventional instruments in a normal cockpit.
Yeah,
and that's what you would do.
But the eyes there would be focusing together. Do your eyes learn to hold different focuses at the same time?
Do you know what?
Is that something you're aware of?
I was so maxed out doing the thing at the time, I didn't have a capacity to wonder what my eyes were doing.
Scientists should study you guys.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't say. Probably, that probably is the case. But I don't really know. As I say, you're so busy focusing on what you're doing at the time, you never really, so just sit there and wonder, all right, what's my right eye now doing? Anyway, so we're now in a situation where we've done this before. We've done the cockpit blackout system, the bag, which is notorious for being the bit that chops Apache parts. So if you're not going to make it through the Apache course, it's more than likely going to be the bag, the cockpit blackout phase that you're going to come a cropper on, because it's pretty demanding to switch up from all the day flying you've done to that point. You're now fully reliant on this green screen, and you go and fly various missions or sortie profiles with the instructor sat in the front, clearly with no cockpit blackout system in place, daytime. So he's got all the capacity in the world. He can see exactly what's going on, and for safety it makes perfect sense. You're sat in the back. It's completely cocooned and blacked out, and you've got sole reference to the outside world is through your right eye. And after a period of time of working extremely hard, you get used to it, you're able to do it. Not particularly well, but the more hours you get flying it, when you got into the hundreds of hours rather than like the couple of dozen hours off the course. By the time you're into the hundreds of hours after the course, years later, then you actually become a lot more comfortable and competent. So back into that Afghan situation, we got the blast wall is completely delaminated. You can't see out. No problem. Revert back to the full on. It's as if it's a very dark night. We're trained for this. We can do it. Now, added to that, it just so happened that it was in the winter time. I can't remember exactly, probably just before Christmas of 2007 it would have been. And it was one of those rare occasions. Normally it'd be ginners. Pretty much most days it would be gin clear, great weather, no cloud to affect.
Ginners?
Gin. Yeah, sorry, that's a pilot word. Assume that it was a military wide word, probably just a flying word. Gin clear, there's no cloud in the sky. It's great weather.
Oh my God. Hang on.
Hello. Too easy.
I normally bollock people for leaving the phone on.
I better check mine's off now. You just
Sorry.
Double check. Yeah.
Sorry, listeners and
Yeah.
viewers.
No problem.
God's sake. With the oldest ringtone in the world, I'm rocking an Alba at the minute. So I've been in the smartphone during the day and putting the SIM card into you. So I'm just, if you want to get hold of me, it's phone call or text. I'm sanitization during the day, and I'm just for focus.
Good work. Very good idea. Good idea.
Anyway,
that's fine. So I'm making a meal out of spinning this relatively average dit. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, we're now in a position, but the cloud cover on this one day was mega low, so that meant nothing could fly, and that's really rare because most days in Afghan, certainly all the times I was out there, you could get up to a decent height, well above the threat range of small arms, have a brilliant battlefield view of what's going on, be in a position to engage, have great comms back to base. It was the perfect position to be in. And of course, stacked up above, you'd have all the jets, you'd have the freedom to maneuver without knowing there's helicopters getting involved. You'd have the ability below you to bring in the Kazovac or the transport helicopters, deconflicting with airspace wise with whatever stuff was being used on the ground, be it mortars or artillery. Normally, no problem at all. On this occasion, because of that cloud cover, nothing was flying because nothing with a sensor, UAV or jet, could see through the cloud. And it was pretty much a case of, right, well, you can snuggle under it as an Apache. That's your best bet. So we were the only asset that could launch on that day. And then, sure enough, not long after we'd just taken over that duty, we had a troops in contact. If I remember rightly, it was a Viking that had gone over an IED, tracker blown off. The guys were taking fire. They'd been pinned down. There was at least a casualty or two amongst them as well. So they were in a bit of a stinker, and they were quite exposed as well. So we get scrambled as the Singleton VHR helicopter. So we're now going, right, this is going to be hard work because we're now low level in a night condition, because obviously I'm referring just to the thermal. A lot harder than it normally would. So you're having to focus a lot more capacity on the flying of it, avoiding smashing into the ground. About 2,000 feet. So easy. Plug almost the autopilot, the holds, just hold everything nice and easy. All your capacity is helping the front seat guy out. Talking tactics, being a weapons system manager, and very little capacity doing the flying or the navving, because that's all relatively straightforward. This is all flipped around. Anyway, we're responding as quick as we can. We take off. Within seconds of taking off, the Pinvis, the thermal, fails. So, and it's stuck. It's stuck at a slight angle. So as I move my helmet around, I move my head around to try and look. It's skewed off at a slight angle, roughly forward. But not good enough at low level, because you need to be able to move your head around, otherwise you're going to stoof in. So, our hand control over to the front seat, and we're trying to get out because we're the only aircraft at that time that can respond to these guys, and they know that they're relying on us. We know they're relying on us to turn up, be a presence, potentially lay down some fire, so that they can regroup, sort their track out, get their casualty dealt with, or several casualties. We need to get cracking. So unconventional, already a bit annoying, hand control over to the front seater. But of course, what you can't do is you can't bring the speed right back to a hover and just loiter, because there's so little performance there. You have to fly enough forward speed, like a plane has to fly forward to get that airflow over the wings. There's a minimum speed on the Apache. I think it was about 50 knots ish. So you couldn't come any slower than that, otherwise you just drop out of the sky. There wasn't enough power. You needed that airflow to consider it like a slow fixed wing.
I'm not following you. So how do you slow down to a hover?
It takes more power to come to a hover, and we never came to a hover. We'd take off as a run-in takeoff, and we'd land doing a run-in landing.
I always wondered why he did that. They flipping Apaches take off like planes.
Yeah, in Afghan environments, yes, because it was so hot, the air's so thin, the blades don't perform, the rotor blades don't perform as well, the engines don't perform as well, and you're as loaded as you can be with fuel and stores, because you want to be up as long as you possibly can. So you take all that extra weight of weapons and fuel, means that performance is not very good.
So if you try and slow down in that situation, you're going to drop out of the sky?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's right.
So when I'd see them in the sky hovering, they'd be just a different load, different payload on them. It'd be different atmospheric conditions. Yeah. Is that the case?
Absolutely. But you probably would have seen them just flying slowly, but not actually hovering in Afghan. Very rarely did we ever get a position. Otherwise, they'd have burnt off most of their fuel and fired all their weapons to be light enough to have that performance. Weird, but you wouldn't appreciate that unless you've been through that flying school and understand the basic aerodynamics. But and of course, because it was winter, you can't go in the cloud because it was icing. So if you get ice over the blades, this is a bad thing because it adds weight, vibration, it clouds up all the sensors. So we couldn't go into the cloud, and we're sandwiched between low cloud and the desert, and my PINVIS doesn't work. My FLIR thermal imaging doesn't work. So I've handed control of the front seater, and what we made the best of it. He flew to the rough area, and we got eyeballs on. We just flew slow circles directly over the Viking, the stricken vehicle, and roughly probably just right in the line of fire of wherever the enemy forces were, for as long as we possibly could. But we were both baggage, because he was obviously focused on trying to do that. He had all the maps and all, spot maps and everything in the front with him as the co-pilot gunner, who was the aircraft mission commander, and would traditionally never put hands on sticks, and would have all his capacity talking to the JTAC and doing all the tactics and the weaponeering, and the guy in the back would be assisting with all that. So I didn't have any of the maps in the back, because I was obviously a pilot on that tour. So, we muddled through as best we could, but we knew, even just by rocking up and flying till we run out of gas, that was enough to buy the guy some time, because of the deterrent of seeing a low flying Apache. It works. I mean, the Taliban were obviously, very aware that we were there, scared of us, and went to ground. And that happened a lot, by the way. Every time we'd pitch up, there was a big scrap kicking off, and as we'd be flying towards it, getting the sit rep and find out what was happening. As soon as we got within sight and sound, everyone would just melt away, and it would all.
Well, this is one of the things I loved about what I love. Like my favourite times when we had the Apaches in tow, when we'd be in a contact. My favourite times would be where we knew there was Apache sitting off, like a KOA, K and a bit. We knew, and you could hardly. Well, you wouldn't be able to hear it, and we knew it was there because we had comms there, and we knew you'd be able to engage. But old Terry Taliban didn't know. They didn't know what was coming. Keep bumping us.
Exactly. See, but that said, though, that one of the really tricky bits of judgment is trying to be at the limit of sight and noise. You can do that. The trade-off is it takes time to be able to do weapons engagements. With this, we talked about the issues of ROE. If you want to come steaming in from, far enough out that they don't see you and you've got the element of surprise on your side, and it takes you a couple of minutes or a minute of flying time to get to a position where you're now in weapons engagement range. So you've now exposed yourself, they can now see you, but you're now in a position to engage them. Actually, the situation is is so dynamic because you've still got all those ROE considerations to take into account, collateral damage, that you couldn't fully assess because you couldn't close up close enough to do enough of a recce without exposing yourself for sight and noise. So you're doing the best you can with a bit of map recce, a bit of a description from the JTAC, the best you can see from looking at a CCTV camera that's like mounted 20k away. So you've got a reasonable picture, but you haven't got enough to make absolute split-second ROE decisions and collateral damage implications. You're doing that on the fly as you're zooming in, and plus you've probably got there's other battle space management considerations, like again we haven't mentioned this. If there's artillery pieces that fly, so you've got to space geographically from them. You can't just fly over the top of them. You've maybe put a sector, and you can take a couple of sectors and just divide the battle space up. But that will then offer certain restrictions on what you can see and how you can engage, which makes it even trickier, because you may be able to engage a target really sweetly from one direction, but that may not be available to you because there's mortars and artillery that's taken that out as an option. Does that make sense? You've got to approach it from a different direction, but that makes it really difficult to identify the target. Yeah. Boo frickety hoo. It's all awesome. It was amazing to have that mental challenge to be able to do that. But you can probably appreciate when you're looking at those guys loafing in an air-conditioned cockpit. Actually, there's a lot of thought that's going on to try and figure out how we can best serve and what we can best do. And then, as I say, clearly every single engagement is fully justified. It was done as a get your popcorn, sit in, watch the cinema, watch the gun footage, and make sure we can it's all above board and no one's going to get put on a manslaughter charge, but also it's a really good opportunity for the rest of the squadron, from the most junior guys even to the most experienced, to learn and improve their weaponeering skills and their surveillance skills.
I appreciate you talking through it. Like I said, I haven't had any idea. I've never spoken to an Apache pilot before. One of the things I was always intrigued by it anyway, ever since. I think most people are, just because, one, helicopters cool, aren't they? And then two, they stick a lot of weapons on a helicopter, make it look badass, and that's an Apache, right? And
it's a great description. I like that.
Yeah. But also, there was a period where I was serving a Power Edge, and I first heard of it with some two-para guys, and one of them, or one or two of them, went and said we're off to try and become Apache pilots, and they transferred out to go become Apache pilots. And then when those one or two guys did it, oh my god, the floodgates opened. Everyone was trying to go for it. I considered it at a time, and then sort of just a fleeting thought, and then that went by the wayside. But yeah, tell me then, how did you go from doing that, mate, to providing evasive driving of all things?
Interesting.
Why didn't you keep flying when you got out?
Good question. I think so. We're at a decision point after my third Afghan tour. So I'd met my now wife. I was about to get into a staff job, and then I was looking at staff college, and then probably a couple of years of non-flying. Not interested. Wanted to carry on flying. As I said, phoned the Air Force up. They were very willing to just let me come straight across and carry on flying. Originally, it was going to be Merlin. I was offered anything within the rotary world that I wanted, which was great. And wound up going on Puma because the Merlin went across to the Navy and the Marines, and then the Puma got extended and upgraded to Mark II. And the plan was to do that for a few years and then slow time get my qualifications so I could become either commercial pilot or, more than likely, an air ambulance pilot part-time, and set my business up on the side of that. But it wasn't too far after transferring across and doing a bit more flying that I realised that I think I ticked that box. It was amazing to get the privilege to go and do all that time on the Apache force out in Afghan, and that was pretty tricky to come close to in any other kind of flying, I thought. So I said, right, blank sheet of paper, let's start from scratch. If I could craft my ideal life, what would I be doing? How would I balance it? What would be involved? So, there are brilliant aspects of the military that I love and I miss, and I will probably continue to miss, that kind of offset by some frustrations. And as you get a bit older, you know when it's your time to leave. I felt that I just being constrained a little bit and being quite regimented, not having the freedom to crack my own routine. I love doing my own thing. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And of course, I'm willing to, spend years and years of my life doing whatever's required, service to the country, doing a great thing, doing a job I love doing. But the sacrifice is working really hard and being told where you're going and what you're doing all the time. So freedom of my own choice of what I want to do. And then I've always had a passion for motorsport. And if I boil it down to what I really love, yes, it was amazing to fly Apaches for that period of time. Actually, I get as much sense of satisfaction and enjoyment and exhilaration from driving a rally car, taking a motorbike on the track, or doing some kind of adrenaline fueled motorsport as I ever did operating the Apache. And I get to do it on my terms. But what I wanted to do was throw in all the other elements that appeal to me. And I wanted to have, it'd be nice to make a bit of money. It'd be nice to do it on my time scale. It'd be nice to pick and choose all the elements of motorsport I really like to do. Cherry pick some of the best bits out of military service that I've enjoyed. So working with great guys, that's probably the first, the thing that everybody would hark back to their military days and say it's about the great blokes you work with. So obviously I'm still working with guys who are either serving or ex-military. It's the nature of it, isn't it? You're going to rope in other guys who are like-minded. So that bit's happening. And then, also I just wanted to throw in some other things that, you still want to grow. You want personal challenges. You want to be able to, improve a skill set that you haven't necessarily, had for like flying. I've spent years of my life crafting that up to the point that I finished flying in 2015. But I didn't have a motorsport background like a lot of professional motorsport guys would have started in karting, as a very, as a young kid, and spent years of their life getting extremely good at that one skill. Well, I was like, right, I've got the challenge now of starting this, from the age of probably 30 as I started getting into it. And I just wanted to do as much motorsport, as much rallying in my spare time while I was in the Air Force, phasing that bit of career out, and get as good as I could at this later point in life. Because I'm actually interested in learning new skills. I'm interested in seeing, challenging myself, see what I can do cerebrally. At the same time, I want to be enjoying it, and it brings me great joy. As I was doing that, I'm not sure if I mentioned just there, as I was originally looking to go and do the business part-time and do either air ambulance or some kind of flying part-time in addition to that, I just realized as I came across the Air Force and did a few more years flying, I was like, it's just not ticking it for me anymore. I'll go back to doing a little bit of flying for fun later on. But what I'd really like to do is, if I can get to the point in a few years' time where we can simulate the best bits of being in an Apache cockpit, but open that up as an experience to a few customers who would love to go and do that. So you take a civilian helicopter, but you get into attack profiles, doing vehicle interdictions against your mate in a rally car. And you get into a profile where you can put simulated ordnance on them, or come into a circle overhead and be in a simulated door gun, or parachute in from 10,000 feet. Chad, as you like, in a black onesie.
It's not Chad. You're basically saying all the best episodes of Top Gear.
Yes, that is exactly right. So all the coolest stuff that you've seen in James Bond, Mission Impossible, Top Gear, I want to throw all that together in the one. And I'm getting to do that with my mates who are the other staff, and I'm getting to hopefully we'll have like-minded customers who just want to do some cool stuff. And to me, that's enough of a challenge, and that's as enjoyable as I want to make it. I don't feel I need to go and do some other job on the side, or I don't feel I want to go and do helicopter flying as a job. I'd rather just involve some cool evolutions just purely for the fun of it.
So Vosper does it. It's driving experiences at the moment for fun, but do you also do it for business?
That's the aspiration. So that's two distinct training groups though, because so the emphasis is on for experienced day guys or for corporates. You want to just take the best bits and make it fun. Yes, there's some challenge and intensity, but the emphasis for professional security guys, or for military, or for even for police, or stunt drivers, that's skill acquisition as quickly as you can. And the fun, I mean, it's a byproduct. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Yeah, you can have a laugh while you're doing it. Of course, what's not fun, being fully sideways in a rally car, zooming around the stage. But the aspiration is to have those as two distinct elements of the business. But I don't think there's significant requirement or money involved in going down the professional route. But I'm very much interested in it. So it'd be nice to have enough revenue from both elements of it. But be able to have some fun with just some customers who really want to come and do some cool stuff and enjoy their time off. Plus also train up some guys who really want the skills, and then hopefully offer up as much as I can. And it's not about me and my current level of skill set. That's why you got a great team of guys who are all SMEs. So I've got some good friendships, got some great guys in. So we've got the junior, youngest ever British junior rally champ as one of our instructors. Exceptional driver, and other plenty of good racers and pretty impressive individuals who are exceptionally good at driving, good at instructing. They're the guys that can teach extremely well, and they can really develop any driver. Plus, we've got other guys from other tactical backgrounds. So we've thrown in. So this is the other James Bond elements. We want to throw in a little bit of simunition. So you're putting some paint rounds down in a car chase scenario, like you see on the films, but trying to be a little bit more credible. You don't do that elsewhere. There's no course for that where you're doing drive-by shootings. And you're trying to put rounds down on one vehicle from another, doing vehicle interdictions. The closest you can get to that, from my experience, is helicopter versus ground target. So, the guys who are, door gunner instructors have probably got the best position, the best background to understand how to get rounds on target as you're flying low and fast past a moving vehicle. They know how to do that. They know how to instruct how to get rounds on target from a moving platform against another moving platform. So we got guys who come and do that with that level of background. So I'm very privileged. I'm now in a position where I can get to do what I want. The trade-off is obviously all the admin, all the work is on me. We're in tricky times at the moment, and hopefully it'll open up both those two streams of training professional guys and offering good experience days. So, yeah. Are you tying in with any of the charities, mate? There's loads, because obviously Mission Motorsport. You got Racing Heroes, Limitless Motorsport. Just for networking sake, apart from anything else. And then I bet there's a bunch of close protection training companies, mate. Snap your hand off. Yeah. So. Glad you said that. Yeah, definitely got aspirations to work with more. But we started. So initial work is with Aerobility. So charity. Aerobility. What's his name? I did a little short. I was at a Mission Motorsport event, and I did a little short. Set a bunch of interviews for Mission Motorsport. It was at it was at Silverstone, and one of the people I met there was the guy who runs Aerobility. I forget his name. He's got a funky name, isn't he? Okay. And then I met a pilot who was disabled, but only a young guy. I mean, like 19 or something like that. He's a flat out pilot. I wish I could remember the names. But Aerobility, amazing organisation. Yeah, that's great. So I've been lucky enough. So they've got a charity ball. And we're giving away one of our training days as a gift for that. And hopefully this will just perpetuate, and we'll just work with many organisations. Yeah, Mission Motorsport, brilliant, but it's obviously Help for Heroes. There's many other good organisations. More than happy to endorse, support. So yes, we're getting there, but there's more people we'd like to work with as time goes on. 100%, mate. I tell you what, if people could see our shirts, right? I'm just going to try and stand up. Yeah, you look like you're sweating there, buddy. Neck dripping. We done well, mate. We're on. It's like an hour and 20 in. We'll start. We'll start.
flown by, innit? We'll start wrapping up, right? So, one thing. So when I noticed on the website, Vosper,
yes.
One of the places you use is Walters Arena.
Yes.
My mate has been driving for Walters for years. That's right near my parents. Yeah. I went, last time I was there, it was, I was randomly at home at my parents in Crinan, like in a little valley called the Dulles Valley in Neath. And then proper little village town of a valley village town, a valley village, I should say.
Yeah.
And I got someone checked in on Facebook. A mate of mine is in the Red Devils, and he was at Walters Arena. I thought, what? Well, I didn't know they did anything up there. And he was at the motocrossing. He'd procured the Red Devils van for the weekend. He'd chucked his motocross bike in the back, and I went up there watching some motocross at Walters. Massive place, unbelievable place.
Yeah.
So, mate, next time you're down there, I'll have to come down and have a look.
No doubt about that. You'd be very welcome. It is the perfect playground for doing. So we obviously you set it up in a variety of different rally stages and do evasive driving skills and all sorts. But you can set up a bit of a range where you can you put simunitions down, make explosions, make it a little bit more like a movie set as you're driving through, and you're not going to upset anyone with noise complaints because it's relatively out in the sticks. It's a massive area and it's all gravel, so you've got the ability to you can slide the car around. In fact, it's actually used by rally training, professional rally teams to do testing for their cars. It's that good. So there's a whole network of really proper long gravel stages.
The longest stage, I don't know what the rally's called now, but it used to be the Network Q rally. Yeah. And the longest stage of the Network Q when I was growing up was there. That's part of it, 37-mile long track. In fact, I just want to mention, he listens to this podcast, and mate, he works for Walters. So Jamie Barnes, there we go. Jamie Barnes works for Walters. I have to
Hello, buddy. Let's get in touch.
Mention me.
Come and have a play in our Scoobies.
That'll get him a promotion at Walters, that would. Or it'll get him yesterday off.
Yeah.
Mate, website. How do people follow? Where's the website for Vosper? How do people follow you? How do people follow the company?
So obviously, the company's called V-Force. So my name is Chris Vosper, V-Force Vehicles Vosper, kind of made sense. But vforcetraining.com, simple as that, vforcetraining.com. Then get on the website, you can see all the courses that we do, all the dates, really easy to book. And there's some great video footage of us having a laugh, power sliding Scoobies around, doing all the great stuff that we do. The vehicle gunnery course, where we're putting down paint rounds as we're driving around in convoy or in a car chase scenario. There's evasive driving, where you're effectively you're an undercover surveillance operator. Cover gets blown, you get in a hard chase up. You've then got evade, so you're doing J turns, you're doing reaction to contact drills, but in a car. So 180 handbrake turns, no notice, and all based on how you'd fly. If you're flying an Apache and you get a contact right, and how you're going to evade that as you're flying along. Similar to if you're on foot patrol, but in 3 dimensions a lot faster. Taking those same concepts and throwing that into all the vehicle drills that we're doing. We've got so it's all about the immersive tactical scenario. That's the bit you do rally driving, get really good at the skills, and then the next evolution and what's more exciting, more interesting beyond just doing the normal rally training day is you then apply that in a tactical immersive scenario. So you learn to drive a rear wheel drive control car, learn rear wheel drive control in a rear wheel drive car, and then power sliding it everywhere, and getting comfortable with that. Then you got to go and rescue a guy. You got to go and pick up a guy who's injured, and while you're doing that, you're then getting chased down. You got to evade capture and avoid getting shot at as you're escaping. So, it's unique. I've not seen anything like this out there other than stuff that's actually in the movies. So I'm pretty convinced we got some of the coolest stuff around. But part of the idea is we're going to continue to evolve and develop, and as we see even better things that we can do and what's even more fun and enjoyable, we're going to evolve into that as well.
Yeah, that's mega. I've just thought of another person I want to put you on to. Oh, right. Man, yeah. Bags. He knows who he is. Bags, he's going to get a call. He's from
Bear Arms.
Yeah.
I'm going to plug Bear Arms. Brilliant. I've spoken to Bags already briefly by text. I definitely do more.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Mega bloke. He's a mega bloke. Good. I'm glad you made the connection.
Thank you.
Chris, it's been It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. It's been listen, I burnt like 2,000 calories. But it's been mega, mate.
My fizz for the day. Yeah, thank you ever so much. I really appreciate you inviting me. I mean, I'm sure you could probably dub that down. If you play it at 1.2 speed, you'll get the gist of what I was saying. But so apologies for drolling on a little bit, but thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.